but a team that we talk about a lot that is always teasing us with the cusp of returning to success and always letting us down inevitably. Manchester United. I've been wanting to talk to you. You've been away, and when Ralf Ragnick signed, I was like, Josh is going to have a lot to say about this. And I did my reading on Ralf Ragnick. I read a bunch of articles on The Athletic. I watched some videos about his coaching philosophy. And, how he was the leader in the terms of the next wave of German coaches like Tuchel and Klopp and all them, and his work with the Red Bull Group and all that. What are your initial thoughts, having seen, I think, 2 games now of Ralf? This morning against Young Boys was a shambles. Nemanja Matic had a horror show. But that game that we played against in the Premier League...
Crystal Palace
I thought it looked good. The pressing looked coordinated. The team looked like they were on the same page.
I thought Ronaldo was going to get taken off on a stretcher. He looked so tired.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, trying to impress the new boss.
And
props.
Fred, right foot outside the box, just goes to show maybe he's got them pulling in the same direction.
I think he said afterwards, and Ralph likes his little jokes in the press conference. He said, I didn't know he had a right foot, Fred. I had to check to see if, it had been deflected.
Yeah.
I know he could shoot with his right, but, the Red Fred redemption arc,
It's a beautiful thing, and it was amazing to see them all pressing, coordinate. They looked like they knew what they were doing and what was expected, which for me is an exciting prospect to watch.
I saw a funny tweet. It was some discussion about whether Fred and namely McTominay would be dropped under the new manager.
Yeah.
And someone responded saying, "Are you kidding? McTominay is a 6'4" Aryan monster. Run all day. Of course he's going to love him." But look, I think these players with a little bit more specific instruction could do a lot better than they are doing. I think we're going to see a lift.
And we did mention that Fred is not a shit player, right?
No.
I know, and the joke is that he's terrible and whatever, but we did make a mention in previous episodes that sometimes having a coach that's able to coach those things out of you, like you mentioned with Lukaku and Conte with the first touch, I mean, that's the role of a coach, right?
Well, for Fred, it's just decision-making, and he always has 1 or 2 moments in a game where he does something crazy. He's usually good for 80% of the game, and then it's the 20% that you remember. And maybe a good coach will be able to make him more consistent and give him more specific instructions when he has the ball or in defensive situations so that he always knows what to do. And there was one thing that was really frustrating me during the Valencia game when Carrick was in charge, that Fred and McTominay wouldn't press at the same time. And that was part of the Solskjaer system, I guess, that they couldn't leave the centre of the park unguarded.
Yep.
So it actually impeded them because the opposition always had a way out.
Yep.
So they weren't brave enough to commit. And we actually saw that change. It's not a function of the players, but it's a function of the coaching and the instructions. We saw that change under Ragnick, and both McTominay and Fred were able to press at the same time. And obviously, that's riskier, but it's a risk-reward equation.
Yeah.
And that's what Ralf Ragnick has built his career on.
Yeah.
Is that idea that, risking playing your players high up the park will reap rewards in terms of...
No, I'm not calling anyone.
I thought you were calling Yaz.
No, I'm not calling anyone. I have
reap rewards in terms of the chances you generate off the turnovers. So.
Yeah, and I had saved just some stats regarding his first.
Okay, all right.
And I want to reel off to you. Sorry, I wasn't going to call. I know that I've done that before, which, to be fair, was pretty fun.
Yeah,
when I did
it was
call.
funny. Yeah. I just don't want you reusing your material.
No. So in that first game in the Premier League, it was the first clean sheet at home since April. It was the first time we'd won possession 12 times in the final third since Sir Alex left.
Mm-hmm.
Most passes in the final third this season, 77. Most touches in opposition box and passes into penalty area this season, and more shots in the first 30 minutes than the entire game against Watford. Definitely a step up in the level of coaching. Yeah. It's clear.
I think there's also a bit of a new manager bounce there, and all these players in a new era with all this talk about his philosophies and which players will fit and which won't. It's interesting that he decided to play 2 up front. That's what they've played at Leipzig for years and years. The sort of 4-2-2-2, very narrow 4-4-2, with Sancho and Fernandes basically playing similar roles. You think of one as a winger and one as a playmaker, but they're both playmakers, and I like that that's being recognised in this shape. And then it gives you a chance to play one of the quick forwards up front in an out-and-out striking role, whereas usually the likes of Martial, Rashford and Greenwood are usually relegated to the wing when Ronaldo's playing up there. So I think it's a good system for United. And, I don't think this level is necessarily going to be maintained for the rest of the season because it just takes a physical toll on players.
Yes,
and
for sure.
The new manager bounce and that willingness to run hard in the first game, might wane in fixtures coming up. So there'll need to be a bit of rotation there. But I'm generally pretty positive about what I saw. And I think Ragnick is a good appointment from a club that has made a lot of bad decisions over the past decade.
And we'll end on this. He's got a 6-month contract as interim manager before he moves into what has been vaguely described as a consultancy role for 2 years. This is a 2-part question for you. If these 6 months go well, and I think success looks like finishing top 4, would you want to see United stick with Ralf Ragnick on a longer term contract? Or would you suggest going with plan A all along, which was his 6 months, and then be more involved in behind the scenes and get a new coach in?
United have made mistakes in appointing caretaker managers as permanent managers before, but I think Ragnick falls into an entirely different category based on his experience. Look, if he's successful in the role, I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't continue coaching other than whether he wants to or not. He doesn't seem to want to do that for a long time. So if he's allowed to make the next appointment and oversee the transition and appoint someone who he knows, who he rates as a coach. Who knows? It might be Ralf Hasenhüttl or someone like that. He's coached with, he's mentored before. Then I don't see a problem with that at all. As long as there is coherence and consistency in approach. Because United have vacillated pretty wildly from manager to manager. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was a massive departure from Mourinho, who in turn was a massive departure from Louis van Gaal's ideas, who was completely different to David Moyes. So, they've had a lot of inconsistency in the dugout. And they haven't been able to build up a long-term plan because they've never had a proper football department. So if Ragnick can essentially become the football department, the director of football, even if it's not, that's not his formal title, if that's the responsibility that he holds, I'm happy with that outcome.
And are they kicking themselves with David Moyes, looking at what he's doing at West Ham? Should they have stuck it out with him?
No, I don't think so. I think he was pretty broken by the Manchester United experience. And I don't think he was ever going to succeed there. I think he needed maybe a bit of time out from the game. I also don't think the West Ham experience is necessarily applicable to top clubs. That's why I always found it bizarre when Sam Allardyce used to say, "Oh, give me 50 million, I'll win the league," or whatever. Because his style of play is designed for underdog teams, and West Ham's is as well. And I think they're hitting the limit of where that can get you. Basically excelling off set pieces, being quite disciplined, very good on the counter attack. A whole bunch of really fast athletic players. And, West Ham's not a small club either. They've spent a lot on transfers. They've got an outrageous stadium deal, which should make them the envy of clubs in England. And, there's been quite good players who haven't succeeded there under Moyes, like Haller and
who's killing in
the Champions League for a team that doesn't rely on that outrageous athleticism up front. I think they're wasting Nikola Vlasic at the moment, who's a great player and should be playing somewhere where he'll start every week and tear it up, but he doesn't seem to fit into the West Ham ethos so far. So I don't think it necessarily applies to the traditional big clubs. I think Moyes is basically peaking right now with what he can do. And good on him, because West Ham are showing that you can knock off the big teams with a very well-drilled game plan. And, they're no slouches in the money department themselves, of course, but it adds a little bit of variety to the league when,
which is great, which is awesome to watch.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that Chelsea game was fantastic. And they make games a little bit chaotic, which I quite enjoy, because that's the fun of watching the Premier League in the middle of the night. It needs to keep you awake somehow, and it's a real ding-dong battle, if you like. It's like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. It's just ridiculous.
Which is good.